Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome to another edition of Wildcard MTG, and we're going to be doing another deck tech from Tarkir Dragonstorm. And I want to preface this that this is not a budget deck. This is a deck where I just wanted to build it as strong as I possibly could for the most part, but still keeping it, tempered to whatever tables it might play against. And on top of that, it is a complete build around. I'm not taking the pre-con and just, adding or subtracting cards. It's pretty much a complete build around. There's very few cards on the pre-con, if any, in here, I believe. So keep that in mind as well. And if you haven't noticed from the title, we're going to be building Teval the Balanced Scale. Teval the Balanced Scale is a 1 black-green-blue legendary creature spirit dragon with flying that says whenever Teval attacks, mill 3 cards. Then you may return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. Teval is a 4/4. So Teval cares about cards leaving the graveyard, but the clause is 1 or more. So if we have 4 cards that leave the graveyard, we still only make 1 2/2 zombie. But if we have multiple instances of 1 card leaving, we can make more zombies. So the way I kind of built this deck is to maximize that with a lot of land sacrifice outlets and then recurring those lands back to the battlefield. Now we also have other graveyard creature recursion in the deck as well because, you want to keep your creatures on the battlefield. And then we also have creatures that care about something leaving the graveyard, just like Teval does, to get even more value out of our cards. So really, the main focus of this deck is sacrificing our own lands to get value. That is how I built the deck. And then getting the lands back onto the battlefield. 1 at a time, 2 at a time, maybe all at a time. Just depends on how we play things. So that's how I built the deck. Without further ado, let's look at how we kind of balanced everything out. So for the first package of creatures here, we have mill and land recursion creatures. And the creatures that we are running are Aftermath Analyst, Blossoming Tortoise, Titania Nature's Force, Bramble Familiar, Sidisi Root Tyrant, World Shaper, Altanak the Thrice Called, Deeproot Wayfinder, Tato Farmer, Aranus Gloomstalker, Titania Protector of Argoth, Titania Voice of Gaia, Floral Evoker, and Muldrotha the Gravetide. So in this little set of creatures here, as you can see, they all have a very common theme of they mill cards or they get land cards back from our graveyard 1 at a time. One that I want to point out here is Tato Farmer from the Fallout set. It's 2 and a green, creature zombie mutant peasant, and it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may get 2 rad counters. Tap it, put target land card in a graveyard that was milled this turn onto the battlefield under your control tapped. So if other people are milling stuff by chance, you can get their lands out of the graveyard. Probably not going to happen. Really, this is about self-milling, so we're going to be wanting to give ourself the rad counters to mill those cards into our graveyard to get the land out of our graveyard back onto the battlefield. And so if you haven't played with rad counters or the Fallout decks, well, what are rad counters? It is a counter that goes on a player, and it says at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, if you have any rad counters, mill that many cards, and for each non-land card milled this way, you lose 1 life and a rad counter. You can resolve this after you draw your card, so that way you are making sure the card you draw won't go into your graveyard. But again, if you mill non-land cards, the rad counters go away, which is fine. It's just an extra way to mill cards and get land cards out of our graveyard. And another fun one here that I wanted to point out was Altanak the Thrice Called. It's an uncommon from Duskmourn. It is 5 generic mana and 2 green for a legendary creature insect beast, and it's a 9/9 with trample. This is whenever it becomes the target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, draw a card. But really what we're going to want to do with this is to pay the 2 and discard it and then return a land from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So really we just want to pitch this into the graveyard to get that land back because we probably have a way to reanimate this for much cheaper than 7 mana. Either way, I thought it was a cool card. It's pretty cheap, even though this isn't a budget deck, but I still put it in here. Now the other little package that we have in this deck that is kind of the crux of why I built this deck are all the Titania cards. They either care about lands going into the graveyard or let us play lands from the graveyard, and we get elemental tokens from each of them, or we gain life. They synergize so well with each other that is the main reason I wanted to build this deck around sacrificing a lot of our lands to gain all the value from those Titanias. Will they stay on the board long? Who knows? But that is why we have Muldrotha, so that way if something does get disintegrated or, killed, it's fine. We'll get it back with Muldrotha. No big deal. Now the next set of cards that we have are card draw and life gain. And there's only 3 of them, and we're playing Baba Lysaga, Tatyova Benthic Druid, and Titania Voice of Gaia, like I mentioned earlier, but it plays into this package as well. Now, Baba Lysaga is cool. I built a deck around her a long time ago, but I figured throwing her in the 99 of this deck would be really cool because we can sacrifice 3 different things to gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. And then if it's a land, we can get it back with something else. If it's permanent, we can get it back with Muldrotha. If it's something else, we can get it back some other way. This is a graveyard deck. We're going to get stuff back, no problem. So those are all the creatures I wanted to touch on. Let's go on to the next part of the deck. And that is going to be ramp and land tutors. I'm running a lot of ramp in this deck. So we got Cultivate, Rampant Growth, Kodama's Reach, Sylvan Scrying, Farseek, Crop Rotation, and Nature's Lore. So 2 of those get non-basic lands, so we can get our forest whatever type lands to get them onto the battlefield. Crop Rotation lets us look for Field of the Dead, because yes, we are running Field of the Dead in this deck. Why wouldn't we? Get more zombies, get landfall triggers. Sylvan Scrying also lets us look for Field of the Dead. Land Recursion and the instant sorceries, we have Life from the Loam, Vengeful Regrowth, Splendid Reclamation, and Will of the Sultai. So 2 of those get all of our lands out of the graveyard, which we would only get to trigger Teval once from that, but that's fine. It would still get all of our lands to bring back, so that way we could trigger the Titanias, or trigger them to have them back on the battlefield to sacrifice to another card we're going to talk about when we get to the artifacts section of this deck. So it's not really a big deal to do this all at once. And then also, Will of the Sultai is a new card, so Life from the Loam is a big one. We can keep recurring this from our graveyard to dredge more cards into our graveyard. So really, really, really good card for this deck. Really any graveyard deck in general, Life from the Loam is incredible. And next up, we have our targeted removal and board wipes. I am running Tear Asunder, Drag to the Roots, In Garrick's Wake, and Death Begets Life. So 2 cards, 3 cards I really want to point out here. Tear Asunder, it is a good exile effect. If you kick it, you can exile anything on the board. If you don't, it just gets artifacts and enchantments, which is fine. Again, I like playing exiled removal. And another new card here that I kind of wanted to mention is Drag to the Roots. It's an uncommon from Duskmourn, and it has Delirium. It says the spell costs 2 less to cast as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. The chances of us having Delirium are probably going to be pretty high, so it's a 2 mana destroy target non-land permanent. Good removal. Yes, it doesn't exile, but it's cheap removal, and that's all that matters, and it plays into us having stuff in our graveyard. I'm running a one-sided board wipe in Garrick's Wake, but then a new card from the new set is Death Begets Life. This is a big one. It's a 5 and a Sultai for sorcery. This is destroy all creatures and enchantments. Draw a card for each permanent destroyed this way. If there's a lot of stuff on the board, I mean, this thing is going to fill your hand up quick. Yes, it is going to cost a lot of mana, and if you're playing it this late in the game, probably just going to drag the game out longer, but then again, you're going to draw so many cards off this most likely that it's not going to matter. You will probably be able to close out the game next turn anyways. So again, it's a new card. I thought it was good. It fits in this deck really well. You want to have destroy stuff and draw cards, and plus, if your stuff goes to the graveyard, it doesn't matter anyways. You're probably going to have ways to get it back. And finally, let's look at our artifacts that care about lands. We are running Zuran Orb, Conduit of Worlds, and Hedge Shredder. So Conduit of Worlds lets us play lands from our graveyard. We have a ton of cards that do this. This is the main thing of our deck. We want to sack so many of our lands to be able to get them all back from our graveyard. So Zuran Orb is our sack outlet for doing that. So Zuran Orb is a 0 mana artifact that says sacrifice a land, you gain 2 life. This in combination with the Titania that I mentioned earlier, most of the Titanias, you're going to be gaining a bunch of life off of each time a land goes to the graveyard from Zuran Orb and the Titania. You're going to be able to get triggers for when the lands come back out with your commander. It's a good way to just stabilize if people are being aggressive to you. Now, if Zuran Orb gets removed, we can probably get it back with Muldrotha, hopefully. If not, well, that sack outlet is sadly gone, but there are other ways to get stuff back from the graveyard in this deck. I wouldn't worry too much about it. And then we also have a new card from Duskmourn, Head Shredder. It's 2 green for an artifact vehicle. Whenever it attacks, you may mill 2 cards, and whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put them onto the battlefield tapped. So the cool thing about this is they will hit the graveyard, and then they will leave the graveyard. Teval will see that, we will get the trigger for the zombie. So pretty cool that it sees it going into the graveyard, then to the battlefield. Otherwise, Teval wouldn't care about this. And, you know, it's only crew 1, so you can crew it with a zombie and get that attack trigger. Now, the enchantment section is also very important. It gives us multiple ways to play multiple single instances of lands from our graveyard, as well as in combination with the Zuran Orb. This could be a huge way to keep that life total up by triggering Teval's ability to make all those 2/2 zombies. So the first section of these enchantments is the land recursion, and we're running Undergrowth Recon, Glacier Wood Siege, Walk in the Closet / The Forgotten Cellar. So these are all fairly new cards. Undergrowth Siege came from Murders at Karlov Manor. It's a 1 green enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Yes, it comes in tapped, but it still would trigger your commander because it is a permanent leaving the graveyard. So it'll get that trigger, it'll make a zombie, boom. And the other one is a new card from Duskmourn. It's a room enchantment. It has 2 sides. The only part we really care about is the walk-in closet part, which is 2 and a green. You may play lands from your graveyard. And then the other part of it, the Forgotten Cellar, does help too. It's 3 and 2 green to unlock that room, or to just play that side of it and then unlock the other one. It's 2 and a green. It says when you unlock this door, you may cast spells from your graveyard this turn, and if a card will be put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, exile instead. So it has a Yawgmoth's Will effect or a Underworld Breach effect, but it's only for that turn. The cool thing is you can lock a door and then unlock it again. We have some other enchantments that are value engines for cards leaving the graveyard. They're Defiled Crypt / Cadaver Lab, Teval's Judgment, and Dredger's Insight. So Defiled Crypt is another room enchantment card. It says whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 Black Horror enchantment creature token. Triggers only once each turn. That's fine. Gives us an extra body. And the other part of the room, the Cadaver Lab, is 1 black mana. It says whenever you unlock this door, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. The card is Teval's Judgment. It's 2 and a black. It's an enchantment. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. So if you have 3 separate things leave your graveyard, you can choose one of those 1 time each. Pretty darn good if you ask me. And the way we built this deck, we could easily have 3 things leave our graveyard in a turn. And then real quick, I want to get to some MVPs of this deck. One that I am always harping on, and I really think more people should run it. And it's sort of catched on. Like I've noticed some people have been running it more, you know, because it's almost a $4 uncommon right now. And that is Spelunking from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. It's 2 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you put a cave onto the battlefield this way, you gain 4 life. Lands you control enter the battlefield untapped. So all those cards that we have that say the land enters the battlefield tapped, well, it's not going to anymore. This helps with the surveil lands we're running. We are running all the caves as well. We're running shock lands, all that kind of stuff. This card is so freaking awesome in any deck where you're running a lot of tap lands. I absolutely love this card. Surprised it doesn't cost more right now. I'm surprised more people aren't running it. I think it's such a real, game changer, especially with how many tap lands are ubiquitous in Commander. This fixes that, and it comes down on turn 3 if you have it. If this is ever in my opening hand, I snap keep all the time because it's such a good card. And the second card I want to talk about here is Excavation. It's 1 in a blue for an enchantment. It says pay 1 mana, sacrifice a land, draw a card. Any player may play this ability. Now, I don't think your opponents are going to want to be sacking their lands to draw cards. I mean, they might, but it's not going to be very smart of them. But because it is symmetrical to the whole table, you think it would be a downside, but really I don't think it's going to be a downside. This is more for us to be able to sack lands and draw cards, and then we'll get triggers off of Titania if she happens to be out when our lands hit the graveyard and we're drawing cards. Why wouldn't you want to run this? I think it's a great include in this deck. It's a little bit of an MVP for card draw. You know, sack all your lands and then play a Splendid Reclamation. Boom. I'm not going to go too in depth with the mana base because there are a ton of different lands, and we are running a ton of sack lands and fetches and all that kind of stuff. The land base alone in this deck costs almost $200. And we are running a very high amount of lands. We're running 40 lands because I said, you know, if we're going to be sacking a whole bunch of them, we also want to make sure we can still play our spells at the same time. So we're running 40 lands in this deck. And like I said, we got fetch lands, surveil lands. Those are the most important, and we will be recurring them for value, no problem. We're also running all 3 of the caves to get value off of spelunking, all that kind of stuff. The lands will be in the deck list, as you all know. So let's get into some pros and cons of this deck. So first off, the cons. No pun intended again. So any deck playing Graveyard Hate will nullify anything we can do with this deck. No matter how much value engine cards we have, if there's nothing in our graveyard, we have no value to accrue. So be aware if you're sitting down at the table and somebody is playing Graveyard Hate, this deck is just gonna suck. It's not gonna be good, it's not gonna be fun, so don't play it. Exile effects or board wipes will cripple this deck's chances of doing anything as well. By board wipes, I mean cards like Farewell. Anything that exiles the whole board is gonna just kind of screw us, and that's just how it is, unfortunately. I really hate cards like that. I do not like Farewell. I don't run it. It's just, it jams up games and makes them slower. And this is a mid to late game deck. You know, this deck really takes a few turns to get set up, get the pieces running, and by that time, you know, more aggro decks are going to have a chance at whittling us down to a point that might put us in a losing position. It just depends on what we have on the board, if we have anything to gain life, that kind of deal. Also, if our commanders on the battlefield, the rest of the deck functions, but just not as well as if Teval is around. And, you know, also outside of that, the commander itself is really kind of just a vanilla 4/4 flying. Outside of its triggered ability, it doesn't really do anything. And if it gets removed a few times, it's going to be a lot harder to cast, even with all the ramp and land recursion we have. Now, the pros of the deck. If everything is running smoothly, we have our value engines up and running, we can easily hit multiple land drops a turn, along with filling our board with a ton of 2/2 zombie tokens and elemental tokens from the Titanias. And ramp. We have so much ramp. There is never a point we should miss a land drop or not be able to accrue some value from our graveyard with lands entering or leaving. So those are the pros and the cons of the deck. How do we win with this deck? You know, how do we pilot it? What is the way to kind of accrue value and beat the rest of the table? Well, there's no real combos in the deck per se. I did kind of stay away from combo-y stuff in Sultai, which, you know, you can easily run Thassa's Oracle and all that stuff. That's cool. Labman, whatever. But really, we just have cards that synergize extremely, extremely well. With the Zuron Orb and all the Titanias and any land recursion, we could flood the board very quickly with elemental and zombie tokens. So using those tokens to be semi-aggro in combat or to sack them for value is pretty much the way we're going to win. And if you can get some attacks in with Teval, you might as well. It's got flying, so, you know, that's good evasion, and it's an easy 4 damage. Why not? But if you're not satisfied with that and you want to make this deck even crazier and have some big budget upgrades, stick around for a few minutes and I'll go through those. Thank you all so much for checking these videos out. I really appreciate it. The comments and everything you guys leave are really, it's awesome. The community is so great with this kind of stuff, especially for somebody who's like doing this in their spare time but loves Magic like me. It's really awesome. I hope you guys appreciate the decks and how I build them. I try to do stuff a little bit different than everybody else. You know, I don't want to retread the same ground that everybody does. So thank you so much for listening. Please hit like and subscribe if you have enjoyed this or found a deck that works for you. And without further ado, let's look at those upgrades. Alright, so the big upgrades that we're going to be running in this deck are things that get us double triggers, get us life gain, life loss, and kill the table, get more land drops, and make a ton of tokens. So obviously for that reason we're running the extra token doublers like Doubling Season Parallel Lives. Those are both $30, $40 cards still. So, you know, if we're making extra tutus from Field of the Dead and our commander, why not? It's going to make the deck way, way stronger and way more out of control. Will I stick on the board long enough? Who knows? Maybe. I mean, Doubling Season, I've never seen it live past a turn, but it's removal bait. You know, sometimes you got to play it and then just see what happens. And then play your even stronger thing next turn. Oops, no more removal. Ancient Greed Warden, which gives us double triggers and we can play lands from our graveyard. Meat Hook Massacre, because, well, that's a win con in its own. If we have a sack outlet and we start sacrificing all of our zombie tokens, boom, we're going to drain the table, we're going to gain a bunch of life. Saw in Half, so we can actually copy our commander and have more zombies. And then, of course, Scape Shift, so we can sacrifice all of our lands, get a bunch of Titanium triggers, and then get more lands onto the battlefield to get landfall triggers and all that other crazy stuff. Pretty good card, but it is almost $40, $50 as well. And then finally, Squandered Resources. It lets you sacrifice a land to get that color of mana to your mana pool. It's on the reserve list. It's really expensive because of this deck, because of some deck that came out really recently. I forget which one it was. It's always been in like the $15, $20 range, but it really went up over the past few months. And again, because it's on the reserve list, so never going to be printed ever again. But yeah, excellent card in this deck, but if you add all these cards in, it really puts the deck close to like $500 or something crazy like that, if not more. But it also takes the extremity of like how strong the deck is to the next level. So keep that in mind. If you like these upgrades, let me know if they work for you. If that's what you're looking for, that's what I would run. I would run all this stuff just to see what would happen. But that's just me. Anyways, thank you all so much for checking out this video. I've been Wildcard MTG, and we'll see you on the next one.